You will hear a conversation between a man and a woman as the man joins a local library. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, as the recording is not played twice. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, I'm new in the area and I'd like to join the library, please.
That's no problem. Let me get an application form. Here we are. Now, all we have to do is fill this in and then I'll get you to sign it and you'll be a member.
Great.
Now then, what's your full name?
Peter Adrian Camden.
How do you spell Camden?
C-A-M-D-E-N.
C-A-M-D-E-N?
Yes, that's right.
Right. And what's your address?
Flat 5, 53 Green Street, Finsbury.
OK, got that. That's near here, isn't it?
Yes, just 5 minutes walk.
What's the postcode?
7434.
Got that now. Now, can you tell me your date of birth?
8th of July 1976.
And what's your telephone number?
Well, I don't have a home number, but I've got a mobile.
That'll do fine.
It's 06634 982 746. Did you get that?
Some of it. Can you say it again?
The code's 06634 and the number's then 982 746.
Right. That's almost it. Now I need some kind of identification to prove where you live. Do you have a driving licence or a passport or anything like that?
I'm afraid that everything I have has got my old address on it. Do you need it now?
No, not now, but you won't be able to take anything out until we see that.
Wait a minute. I've got a letter addressed to me here that arrived this morning. Will that do?
Oh yes, that's a good idea. That will be fine. Let's look. OK, well that's finished.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
Could I ask you a few questions? The council that runs the library is running a survey to find out what kind of books people prefer so that they can direct their buying.
Yeah, no problem.
OK, so what type of books do you like?
Well, I'm very keen on mysteries. You know, when a detective is trying to find out who did the murder. Historical novels interest me too. Romance, never. My sister loves them, but they bore me to tears. I quite like books on animals too. I get them out sometimes. Not science fiction either. Too weird.
Well, I think that's it then.
Good. Oh, do you charge anything?
The library is free unless you want to rent out some of our videos or DVDs.
And how much is that?
Well, we rent videos out for $4 each and DVDs are $6. You must leave us a deposit of $60 as well. That's returnable, of course.
I don't think I'll get any of those just yet. Can I pay later?
Sure, just give the money in when you're ready to rent them out.
Well, thanks very much. You've been very helpful. I might take a book out now for the weekend, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, goodbye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a radio presenter interviewing a doctor. First you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully to the interview and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello everyone. I've just been joined in the studio by Dr. Matthew Johnson. Dr. Johnson works at the Wesley General Hospital and he's here today to tell us all about giving blood. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning.
So Matthew, why is it important for us to give blood?
Donating blood is not important. It's actually vital that people do this. Without donated blood, thousands of people would die every year, and it's something that could affect everyone. We all expect blood to be there for us, but barely a fraction of those who can give do. Yet, sooner or later, virtually all of us will face a time of great vulnerability in which we will need blood, and that time is all too often unexpected. The need for blood is great. On any given day, an average of 38,000 units of red blood cells are needed. Blood transfusions are often needed for victims of things such as accidents and burns, heart surgery, organ transplants, and patients receiving treatment for leukemia, cancer or other diseases. In 2002, nearly 29 million units of blood components were transfused, and with an ageing population and advances in medical treatments and procedures requiring blood transfusions, the demand for blood continues to increase.
We really need that much?
Yes, and we need it now. Blood supplies nationwide have reached critically low levels, with less than 1 day's supply of several blood types. Thousands of accident victims, cancer patients, premature babies, and countless others who need blood to stay alive are hoping you'll care enough to help them. All blood types are needed. You now have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 15 to 20.
What are the different types?
It's a bit more complicated than that. First we collect the whole blood from donors, and then it's sorted into the different types, which are basically O, A, B or AB, though there are also divisions here. Then the blood is split into its constituent parts. We divide it into 4 basic parts. First there are the red blood cells, then the white blood cells, then things called platelets, and finally plasma. This is shipped off to hospitals where they use the blood parts that the patients need.
What are the different parts used for?
Well, as I said before, the whole blood is your blood in its natural state, and something we rarely use. It's much more useful to us to have it separated into its component parts. Red blood cells are what everyone associates with blood, i.e. it's red. It's widely used to replace lost blood during surgery or when people hemorrhage. Its main function is to carry oxygen to cells. White blood cells are the most important part of the body's immune system, and they're used for patients whose normal defense systems aren't working properly. Platelets are crucial for making your blood clot, and we need to give them to patients who suffer from illnesses that deplete their natural levels of platelets, or they will bleed to death. Finally, plasma is what carries the other parts of blood around and needs to be administered with any of the other components. Take away the red blood cells and this is actually yellow.
So that's what blood is all about. Now you're here in Wesley today to collect blood. Can you tell us where and when we can donate?
Of course. We're set up here today, that's Wednesday, and for the next 2 days at Wesley General Hospital at the outpatients department. Come along between 9 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. and we'll be able to deal with you within 1 hour. And let me tell you a few things that will calm your fears about giving blood. Aside from a brief needle prick, it doesn't hurt to give blood. Your body will replace the blood you donate within days of your donation. And finally, you can't catch AIDS, hepatitis, or any other disease by giving blood. And of course, you get a cup of tea and a biscuit afterwards.
And can anyone give blood?
Almost everyone. Donors must be in generally good health, be at least 17 years of age, weigh no less than 110 pounds, have not received a tattoo within the past year, and not have donated whole blood within the past 56 days. We screen donors with a series of questions before we take the blood, so if you're unsure, come down and we'll let you know. Please come down and see us. Remember, if you can donate 1 pint of blood, this can save up to 3 lives.
Well, thanks, Matthew. I, for one, will definitely be going down to Wesley General to donate.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear an interview about global warming. As you listen, answer questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Dr. Parkinson, global warming was the threat of the 1980s, but it seems to have fizzled out of people's minds. Why do you think that is?
Yes, in a way you're right. I think scientists have become occupied with the task of trying to find out whether it really is happening and, if so, whether it's caused by human activities.
A greenhouse effect is, after all, a natural phenomenon.
Yes, as we know, naturally occurring gases float above us, acting as insulators that prevent heat being radiated into space.
And the fear is that the insulation might get thicker.
Yes, and because of this, the Earth might get warmer.
The latest prediction we've heard is that the temperature will increase by about 1/3 of a degree every 10 years. What are your feelings?
Well, this prediction is difficult to make. You see, the global climate is the result of a web of influences. Who is to say that a simple action, such as adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, will not have several effects which might even cancel each other out?
And I understand that the prediction is hard to verify whatever.
Precisely.
Why is that?
Because the Earth's temperature surges and subsides naturally. In fact, the best way of detecting global temperature change is to measure the temperature of the oceans as accurately as possible.
And this avoids the sort of seasonal fluctuations of the temperature of land mass.
Yes, in fact, an understanding of the oceans is crucial to understanding how the global climate works. The ocean transports heat around the globe. It's like a great reservoir of heat. A tiny change in sea surface temperature denotes a huge change in the amount of heat it is storing. Before Parkinson goes on to explain, you will have another chance to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the talk carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
And now, I understand you are looking at ways of refining this measurement of ocean temperature.
Yes, for a long time we've measured it by placing thermometers in buoys bobbing in the oceans, and also when ships draw water through their engines.
It's also been done by satellite, hasn't it?
Yes, but now data from a more promising system is being collected. This is the European Along-Track Scanning Radiometer, or ATSR, a much simpler name. The ATSR orbits the Earth above us.
And what stage are you at with this?
Well, it's been up there 2.5 years now. It's an infrared detector that senses the Earth's temperature with great accuracy, and this is what we need. We have to be able to separate out random changes in temperature.
I believe there are other advantages as well.
There are several. Every few days it covers the entire Earth, so it produces large quantities of data. It measures the temperature from 2 angles, which allows correction for any effects that the intervening atmosphere may be having on its readings. Its field of view has a width of 500 kilometers, and it measures the temperature to 0.3 degrees centigrade.
And it should go on for years?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Parkinson, for talking to us today. And now over to...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear an extract from a talk about preventative medicine, especially how students can look after their own health. As you listen, answer questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Pat Plant, and I'm here to talk to you about preventative medicine in its widest and most personal aspects. In other words, I'm here to tell you how the patients should wrest control of their health away from the practitioners of medicine and take charge of their own medical destiny. I want to talk about staying out of the hands of the doctor. When a patient takes responsibility for her or his own health, and let's decide the patient is male for now, men are in fact more at risk than women anyway. When the patient takes over his own health regime, he must decide what he wants to do. The first thing, of course, is to give up the demon nicotine. Smoking is the worst threat to health, and it's self-inflicted damage. I have colleagues who are reluctant to treat smokers. If you want to stay well, stay off tobacco and smoking in all its manifestations. Our department has recently completed a survey of men's health. We looked at men in different age groups and occupations, and we came up with a disturbing insight. Young men, particularly working-class men, are at considerable risk of premature death because of their lifestyle. As a group, they have high risk factors. They drink too much alcohol, they smoke more heavily than any other group, their diet is frequently heavy in saturated fats, and they don't get enough exercise. We did a smaller survey in which we looked at environmental factors which affect health. I had privately expected to find air or water pollution to be the biggest hazards, and they must not be ignored. However, The effects of the sun emerged as a threat which people simply do not take sufficiently seriously. Please remember that too much sunlight can cause permanent damage. Given this information and the self-destructive things which people, particularly young men, are doing to themselves, one could be excused for feeling very depressed. However, I believe that a well-funded education campaign will help us improve public health standards and will be particularly valuable for young men. I'm an optimist. I see things improving, but only if things that you as students can do to improve your fitness. So now, I'd like to issue a qualification to everything I say. People will still get sick, and they will still need doctors. This advice is just to reduce the incidence of sickness. It would be great if disease was preventable, but it's not. However, we have power. In the late 1980s, the Surgeon General of the United States said that 53% of our illnesses could be avoided by healthy lifestyle choices. I now want to discuss these choices with you. You should try to make keeping fit fun. It's very hard to go out and do exercise by yourself, so it's wise to find a sport that you like and do it with other people. If you swim, you can consider scuba diving or snorkeling. If you jog, try to find a friend to go with. If you walk, choose pretty places to walk or have a reason for walking. Your exercise regime should be a pleasure, not a penance. The university is an excellent place to find other people who share sporting interests with you, and there are many sports teams you can join. This, unfortunately, raises the issue of sports injuries, and different sports have characteristic injuries. As well as accidental injuries, we find repetitive strain injuries occurring in sports where the same motion is frequently performed, like rowing and squash. The parallel in working life is repetitive strain injury, which may be suffered by typists or other people who perform the same action hour after hour, day after day. In this context, therefore, the most important thing to remember before any sport is to warm up adequately. Do stretching exercises and aim at all times to increase your flexibility. Be gentle with yourself and allow time to prepare for the game you have chosen to play. Don't be fooled by the term warm-up, by the way. It's every bit as important to do your warm-up exercises on a hot day as on a cool one. I think one of the recognitions is that all sports can borrow from each other. Many sports programs are now encouraging players to use cross-training techniques, that is, to borrow training techniques from other sports. Boxers have been using cross-training for years, building up stamina by doing road work and weight training, while honing their skills and reflexes. Other sports which require a high level of eye-hand coordination are following this trend, so you see table tennis players running and jogging to improve their performance, and footballers doing flexibility exercises which can help them control the ball better. All of these results are good, but the general sense of well-being is best, and is accessible to us all, from trained athletes to people who will never run 100 meters in less than 15 seconds. Good health is not only for those who will achieve athletic greatness.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
inspired by thirst, I'm inspired by worth. I desire your worst, so you can just hide while I work. I ain't tired, you first. I'll write a second, third verse about the